Hi hooligans! Today we are talking about Castlevania Nocturne Season 2. It is really late right now, but I just got through finishing the entire season in one sitting, so I am too excited to go to bed. I need to yap about it right now. Part of the reason why I'm staying up this late to binge the whole thing is because there was no advertising on this season whatsoever. I had no idea it had already come out for 2 days, and I was like, what? I need to make up time and finish it right now so I can review it. But yeah, I think Netflix has just been doing a really bad job advertising the new seasons of their animation department, at least, because there's also a new season of The Dragon Prince. I wasn't aware of that, and I've been following that show since season 1. If you guys remember, I also made a review on season 1 of Castlevania Nocturne, which you can find up here somewhere. But basically, a big complaint of the first season was that it did not stay true to the original Castlevania games. I'll say it again here, I have never played the game, so I am not attached nor familiar with these characters whatsoever, besides Richter, because he's in Super Smash Brothers. But if you did not like the first season because it didn't stay true to the games, I completely sympathize with you, because I know how I kind of got picky with the live action Avatar, the last Airbender remake, because I was like, that's not how the original did it, and now I hate you. From what I understand, Annette is replacing one of the characters from the original games. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, since I have no connection to these characters, I love Annette, and I thought the direction of the story was great. So if that is your main complaint why you don't like this show, well, we're just gonna have to agree to disagree right now, because again, I have no connection to the original. Now, I do think this season was better than the first season, and I already liked the first season, but this season really did a solid job. I still don't think it's as good as the original Castlevania. The characters were just a little more fleshed out, but it's still pretty incredible, and I feel like it was quicker to get to a good season than the original, because it took them a couple of seasons also to find their footing. But I would be remiss if I didn't praise the animation of this series once again. I mean, this show just has some of the best animated fight scenes that I've seen. Some of the memorable fight scenes for me, just off the top of my head, was Alucard in Egypt in that flashback scene, Richter and Annette fighting off some of the night creatures in the woods, and of course the very long fight at the end with Erzsébet and Drolta. Those fight scenes were just incredible. Also, interestingly enough, almost all of the main protagonists can use some type of magic, whether it's the elemental magic or summoning creatures. We get to see a lot more magic in this show compared to the original, since, you know, Trevor didn't really have access to magic. So I think the use of constant magic in all of the fight scenes definitely elevated the animation a lot. Also, I don't know if we're considering Castlevania as an anime, since it is like a Western audience for this show, but they definitely took a lot of animation inspiration from anime, at least. Like, for example, at the end when Richter was slicing Drolta in half, they used the action lines, sketchy lines. I don't really know what this is called, but basically where it's all white and you just see sketches and outlines of the characters to create this sense of energy and power. I thought that was a very anime thing to do, and I thought it was really well done. Now let's go through the characters kind of quickly, because there's a lot of characters. So Richter, our main Belmont guy, he kind of became a side character this season, which is fine, to be honest, because I do find a lot of the other characters more interesting than him. But he still had some really good character moments and a lot of fighting moments. Of course, he was involved in a lot of the big fights. I do really like when he was talking to Alucard about Annette. I thought that was really wholesome, and I really liked when he was talking about how he almost blames himself for his mother's death, because if he didn't get involved, she would probably be still alive. And speaking of him and Annette, they definitely got together by the end of the season, but I will have to say I didn't really feel a lot of chemistry between these two characters, just how they were written. I do think they're really cute, and I do support them together, but I just don't think we got enough time to see them banter, kind of like Trevor and Sypha from the original. It just kind of felt a little bit forced to drive this narrative between them two. It did feel like Richter was more interested in Annette, mostly because he mentioned her more than Annette, since Annette was like focused on her own journey this season. Also, Alucard came back at the end of the last season, and he's always the MVP, and this time around he's even more powerful and got definitely a hefty power up. We can see now he sort of emulates his father and has some of Dracula's powers, including turning into bats. I can't recall if he did that in previous seasons, maybe he did, but he also can summon these meteors from his cape, which is really cool. And he's got new weapons, and his main longsword that follows him is also so badass and just contributed to a lot of good fight scenes as well. I also found when Alucard was being a matchmaker for Richter and Annette, I thought that was really cute, where he was like, bro, you gotta just tell her you love her, man. Like, she might not be around, you might not be around. Tara unfortunately doesn't get as much to do this season around after she got turned into a vampire by Erzsébet, but I did like some of her moments, including using ice as like an umbrella to shield from the sun. I thought that was so clever. So the main thing about her story this season is that she is a vampire, but she kinda has a soul and she's still good. At the very least, we can see that she still cares about her daughter, and she did mean that she wanted the best for her, but we're not certain that she doesn't have her own sinister plans, and we'll get into that a little bit at the end of this video. But I do like the concept of vampires having souls. Definitely reminds me a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer with Angel and Spike, that there are some vampires that can be good depending on how they were, in their past life maybe. And speaking of vampires, Erzsébet is of course the main big bad, at least for the most of the season. She did not seem as scary this season, because the first season, she hasn't arrived yet, so we're thinking, oh my god, what is she gonna do when she gets there? And when she was there, they could not do anything to her. But I think she was a little less scary this time around, maybe because Team Belmont kind of got a huge power boost with Alucard coming to join. But I wish Erzsébet kind of got her own backstory a little bit. The only thing we know is that she was this evil noble woman who also just murdered people when she was a real person. So there was no really development for her. But I did think Erzsébet's face here was really funny when she was crashing out about Drolta. And speaking of Drolta, she was killed last season, but surprise, she comes back as a night creature, which I think is the first time that we see a undead person, a vampire, also be brought back to life for a third time as a night creature, and now she's like even stronger than before. I also thought the design of her night creature form was really awesome, and then when she evolved into the final Sekhmet version, it was also really, really cool. We get a lot more of Drolta's backstory this time around. Basically, at the start of every episode, we see a flashback of Drolta in the past trying to find the best host for Sekhmet. So basically, Sekhmet is this Egyptian goddess that wants to come back and rule the world, but requires 2 souls. One of them is contained in the original body of Sekhmet in this mummy, and for the second soul, she needs to find the perfect host, and the perfect host ends up being Erzsébet. So basically, Drolta is the reason why Erzsébet is even a vampire. And then at the end, when Erzsébet kind of loses the big fight, she's like, screw it, I'm gonna do this myself, and I'm gonna turn myself into Sekhmet, and she kills Erzsébet and drains the power to become Sekhmet. So my question is, why didn't she just do that from the get-go? Like, if she knew she could handle the power of Sekhmet, why didn't she just choose to be the host? I'm a little confused about that part. Moving on to Maria, she also had a really interesting storyline this season. She was definitely on a path of darkness. She was basically grieving her mother becoming a vampire, and then she's also dealing with the fact that her father was the one who tried to kill her, and then ultimately was responsible for her mother turning into a vampire. And when she meets up with her mother later, she almost was willing to become a vampire also, because she was just so at a loss. But ultimately, she becomes hell-bent on finding the abbot her father and killing him. And Jutes was kind of telling her that no, you don't want his blood on your hands because you can never go back. You are innocent, you know, you're a force of good in this world. But honestly, I was like, she ate for killing him, because like I would have done the same thing. Like, the abbot was such a horrible piece of crap. I think she did a great job ending his life, but hey, that's just me. I thought it was really satisfying for her. And kind of because of this, she also got a huge power boost this season. Last season, she was basically only able to summon a few birds and maybe a tiger here or there. But this time, she was able to summon a huge dragon. That the dragon was powerful enough to basically give Urzabet a hard time. I really liked the look of her summoning powers also, especially when it was like the darkness portals. I thought that was really, really cool. So I do wonder what her path moving forward will be, because at the end we do see her say all people who worked for vampires deserve to die, and honestly she kind of ate that. But obviously there's a little bit of nuance there depending on the vampire, like maybe her mother or maybe another vampire with a soul, right? So Alucard heard her say this and was like, girl, that's kind of concerning. Maybe we should circle back to this. Okay, now let's move on to what seemingly was the main character of the season, Annette. And personally, she's my favorite character, so I'm kind of glad that the creators went with this direction instead of whoever the original character may have been. And speaking of main character, she kind of reminded me of Trevor from the first Castlevania, especially when she almost died by sacrificing herself at the end, but then woke up in her lover's arms. So it was very Trevor coded. So her arc this season was that she was seeing these spirits and talking to her ancestors, and she needed to go into the spirit world to discover more about her powers. So she's able to meet her mother and then meets this ancient god who leads her to find the third secret soul of Sekhmet, and then she ultimately becomes another version of Sekhmet that fights the evil Sekhmet. There's a lot of Sekhmets. And then I loved seeing her use of powers also, especially in the underworld when she had that shield and she turned it into a boat, and she just used it in a bunch of creative ways that honestly does remind me of like earthbending and metal bending in the Avatar series, but in a completely unique way that we haven't even seen in that show. Richter Belmont didn't have too much to do this season, but he was able to become Maria's sort of father figure this season, and he was able to gain the ability to use magic just like Richter, and so some of his fighting moments were also pretty awesome. Olrox was probably one of my favorite characters last season, and he continues to be one of the most interesting ones, but he doesn't get too much screen time. Hopefully we'll see more of him moving forward. But basically Olrox was going to skedaddle, leave town before the big fight happens, but he ultimately decides to stay and help out the Belmont group. We also got to see a cool moment when Olrox saved Richter from Drolta, so that was kind of a cool moment since they of course have unresolved tension since Olrox was the one who killed Richter's mom. Mizrak I think is also a really interesting character, especially because he's struggling with his religion and the reality that he's in, and at the end he was on the verge of dying and Olrox saved him by turning him into a vampire. This is a very classic vampire scenario, of course, and I would bet that there's going to be some point of contention between these two, since I'm sure Mizrak did not want to become a vampire. And last but not least, Edward also played a small but mighty role this season. He was kind of responsible for taking down a good portion of the night creatures, and he's the one kind of leading this new generation of night creatures who still retain their memories, still retain a soul, like the one French Revolution girl that also looked really cool with her like ice powers. So yeah, those two were kind of working together to take down the other evil night creatures. I also thought the moment when Edward's hands on his face opened up, that was a really cool moment. And I did enjoy Edward's contribution to the music this season, although every time he sings it does catch me off guard sometimes, and kind of can't take it seriously, but hey, it's the effort that counts. So overall, this season was awesome. The pacing was really, really great. There were no filler episodes at all. I feel like each episode definitely contributed to the finale of the season. Episodes 7 and 8 were so awesome. It was just jam-packed with action. I was like, wow, there's another episode that we can continue to see fighting. That's all I needed. I'm honestly a little bit surprised that they wrapped up this Erzsébet plotline in just 2 seasons, but I'm really glad that they did, because if there was another season where they were fighting Erzsébet, I do think it would have dragged a little bit, because I almost thought that Drolta was gonna survive again and then she was gonna come back later. Honestly, the ending of season 2 could be the series finale if there is not another season, so I'd be perfectly happy if it ended here, but obviously they're leaving room for potential story later on. So let's talk about what we could possibly see in season 3. So Tara, the mother of Maria, is going to be probably a really, really important character next season, if not the big bad, because she has a close tie with the shadowy figure known as Old Man Coyote or Mephistopheles, who I'm assuming is kind of like the devil or death or something like that. Not sure if Tara is being controlled by this entity or if they're just working together, but clearly she seems like she has something up her sleeves. Also, does this mean that Maria is going to have a big confrontation with Tara, maybe leading to her killing her mother as well? That would be crazy. And is Maria gonna continue down a path of darkness, because clearly she seems pretty heartless by the end of the season? And we're definitely going to be seeing more of Richter and Annette and Edouard in their hometown in Saint-Domingue. And then are we going to see Richter and Olrox have their big confrontation? Because Richter did say, I'm going to kill you one day, but not today. And then is Olrox and Mizrak going to have their confrontation, because Mizrak clearly did not want to become a vampire? What do you guys think is going to happen next? Please let me know in the comments below, and let me know what you thought of this season overall. Personally, I would give this season a 4 out of 5 vampires. I thought it was really, really well done. But that's all I had for you guys today. I need to go to bed. It is really late, but I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace. Hey hooligans, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed this review, then make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure to check out some of these videos available right now.